और मेरा बैंक तो एक किस्म का उदाहरण है। 1947 में 13 ब्रांचों में से 2 ब्रांचें इंडिया में रह गई, 11 वहाँ चली गई। उनका भी हमने जितना भुगतान था हम ही ने किया, और आज हमारे बैंक के 1500 ब्रांच है और 1500 एटीएम है। तो हम लोग एक किताब लिख रहे हैं अभी, जहाँ हम कह रहे हैं, और शुक्र है कि यहाँ पर प्रधानमंत्री ऐसे आगे हैं जो अपनी देश की कल्चर पे देखते हैं। उसका किताब का नाम है, जो फरवरी एंड मार्च बिगनिंग में आ जाएगी, बाज़ल नॉर्म्स और भारत नॉर्म्स। हमारे बैंकों से सीखना चाहिए इन लोगों को कि कैसे 100 वर्ष तक बैंक हर परिस्थिति में अपने आप को रोबस्ट रख सकता है, जबकि उल्टी गंगा बह रही है, हम उनसे सीख रहे हैं। तो मुझे लगता है कि हमें अपने ही देश में अपनी ही सभ्यता से कुछ लेसन्स लेके और बैंकिंग इंडस्ट्री को संभालने की ज़रूरत है। शुक्रिया।
आई थिंक थैंक यू सर, बड़ा अच्छा पर्सपेक्टिव आपने दिया कि वही जो हम बात कर रहे हैं कि रीफाइनेंस बॉडी अगर अपने ही अंदर हो और अपने ही सेक्टर को केटर करे तो वो एक ज़्यादा बेहतर होगा, बजाय इस पे कि हम किसी बाहर की संस्था की ओर देखें। So I'll now move on to Hotra Saab, since you chair one of the largest and the oldest perhaps refinancing bodies, and one which is really looked up to. So sir, I would like to request you to share your experiences. How has been the refinancing story when it comes to housing finance companies, especially in the light of, have you seen any major challenges in terms of addressing to the funding needs of the HFCs and the concerns? And how would you like the story to play forward? Just quick thoughts on that.
थैंक यू। रिफाइनेंसिंग से पहले मैं थोड़ा फिनांस के बारे में बोलूँगा, क्योंकि फिनांस के बाद ही रिफाइनेंस आती है। द फिनांसियर क्रिएट्स एन एसेट, रिफाइनेंस इज प्राइमरली टू टेक ऑफ दोज एसेट्स फ्रॉम हिज बुक एंड प्रोवाइड लिक्विडिटी। इन द प्रोसेस क्या होता है ना, एक तो लिक्विडिटी होती है, दूसरा कैपिटल फ्री हो जाता है। बट समहाउ the Indian lenders in our country because I have spent 3 decades in a bank, so as bankers we are really so very fond of the balance sheet size. So we want to hold on to the assets onto our book because the year-on-year growth rate, the balance sheet size is something to flaunt about. लेकिन लेंडर का रियली काम होना चाहिए क्या, कि मैं ओरिजिनेट करूं ज़्यादा और ज़्यादा लोगों को क्रेडिट मुहैया कराऊं। हाउ टू मेक द फॉर्मल क्रेडिट रीच द नीडी and reach the bottom of the pyramid. वो कैटर करने के लिए you need more number of lenders or more capital to provide those the formal credit to the people. So there is an essential need. Refinancer वहाँ पर ज़रूरी हो जाता है कि you need to take off those assets from the book, provide liquidity, free capital, दोनों हो। तो अभी रिफाइनेंसिंग में हम लोग कैपिटल को फ्री नहीं कर पाते, क्योंकि उसके बुक में रहता है मैं खाली लिक्विडिटी देता हूँ। कैपिटल भी फ्री करने की जरूरी है ग्रोथ के लिए। दैट इज वेयर द रिक्वायरमेंट ऑफ सेक्यूरिटाइजेशन कम्स इन। नाउ इंडियन securitization market, refinance market has grown very well really. Over the years we have mastered the art of refinancing, and as NHB, I think the refinancing bodies, because we enjoy certain privileges by virtue of the provisions in the act, we can fund during refinance during distress period as well. Unlike banks, for them the exposure ceilings, the norms are bit stringent compared to the risk-taking capability of DFIs, and the refinancing bodies is much higher. That is where what happens is, if you look at NHB's refinancing, we fund refinance almost 40% of the priority sector loans originated by the HFCs in terms of number. But because the housing finance companies, this number is not that great. An Indian housing story, particularly after the post-merger of SDFC with the SDFC Bank, it is 20% of the balance sheet, the home loan book is with HFCs and 80% with the banks. Prior to this, it used to be 33% and 66, 1/3, 2/3. So if you look at the numbers that the banks and the HFCs, they have disbursed during last 5 years, is something like 2 crore loans, almost 1.8 crore plus loans which have been disbursed during this period. And in terms of annual numbers, if you look at the immediate past years, it is something like 35 to 40 lakh home loans in a year are disbursed. How much can be refinanced? Because the refinancing capabilities are again restricted because of who avails the refinance. NHB refinances primarily to HFCs, housing finance companies. Because for banks, the intermediation by a refinancing body really increases the cost for them. They have got access to CASA. So here question comes is how to add one more layer to provide liquidity, to take off the capital as well as to free capital as well as take off the books from the loans from assets from the books of the HFCs and banks. This is the securitization platform. NHB is working actively. The RMBS platform is coming up very shortly. It is in advanced stages. And if you look at the Indian securitization market as of now, it is primarily DA transactions. Only very recently, the DA and the PTC route has been 50-50. The PTCs have really 51% till only recently last quarter, whereas the DA transaction for current year is less than 50%, 49%. And even in these PTCs, if you look at, the dominance is that of the asset-backed securitization, that is a vehicle loans primarily, almost 65% is vehicle loans. And the mortgage-backed, residential mortgage-backed securitization, if you look at it, is something like 15-16% of the total market. So to refinance the housing growth story, essentially the RMBS will be key. That is off the corner anytime now that it will be there. One more advantage of a securitization platform will be, is so far the housing growth story in the country. If you look at the total housing growth, it was something like total home loans. I don't know how many of us are really aware of this. Total home loans in the country when NHB was started by Government of India was something like 2,000 odd crores. Till 2015, when Housing for All was launched, the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, it was something like 10 lakh crore. So from 1% of GDP in the year 2000, it went up to 8%, and today we are close to something like 11%. And if you look at the number, in terms of number, from 10 lakh crore, we have grown to something like 30 lakh crore. From this 30 lakh crore, where we are looking at in the next 5 years is, we are thinking of doubling in next 5 years. I think that is the kind of demand that the millennials pose in front of you, because they want a home. The propensity to buy a home has really increased compared to rent a home.
No, I think very interesting perspective put forward by you that while we talk about the availability of funds, the capital part is also to be taken care of, and that is where instruments like securitization can play a key role. And going ahead, yes, this could be the real engine driver for increasing the numbers. Moving on to Mr. Acharya, who comes from an organization which is, I would say, the hotbed right now, catering to the MSME segment. Sir, SIDBI is both into direct financing and also refinancing. So just to request you to share your perspective in terms of what has been your experience when it comes to refinancing, because I know SIDBI has been also refinancing NBFCs who are further onward lending to the MSME segment. So your quick thoughts on this.
Yeah, thank you. A very good afternoon to all of you. I'll, in fact, put it slightly in a different context, the concept of refinancing and the role of the DFIs as regards to our objective of Viksit Bharat. So when we are talking of, this $5 trillion economy in next few years and then a developed nation by 2047, where do you place ourselves? So, when, of course, there are borrowers and there are lenders. So, about 2 decades back, SIDBI had done some innovation in Indian financial system in terms of, innovating new institution building by creating what is now called as microfinance institutions. So that was a supply side intervention because, banks are there. On the on the demand side, the borrowers are there, and the supply side banks are there. But we created another set of institutions in addition to the banks who will be needing to, because the demand was huge, and in a country like India, you need possibly multiplicity of lenders. So a new set of institutions were created. But having said that, we know, and the rest is history. See, what is happening today is that I'll give you a small example. What is the need currently? Everybody knows that, when we talk about MSMEs, of course, we don't have recent data, but whatever data of 2016 census, it says there are about 7 crore MSMEs in the country. It must have grown multifold by now, but assuming that figure also, more than 90% of them are micro, and 90% of the micro enterprises are operating in the informal sector. So, meaning thereby, about maybe 5 crore or so units are already in the informal sector. So, only 2 crore, in fact, the figures also suggest that when you see the Udyam registration platform, the Udyam registrations are there, hardly 2 crore Udyam registrations are there. Recently, we have taken initiative with Ministry of MSME, Government of India. In fact, Reserve Bank also has given the regulatory directions to the bank. We have developed something called a Udyam Assist platform. So that is to formalize the informal sector. See, just imagine the numbers, humongous numbers. If 5 crore enterprises, they are operating. So even if you put a number of, say, even very small, very, marginal figure of 2 lakh rupees, if they are turnover per year into 5 crore informal. See, what is the formal sector growth that we are giving to the total count of the GDP of the nation? When we are talking about 5 trillion, what is the contribution that is directly coming by just a small intervention of formalizing the informal? So that is something we are now focusing on. That is one. And second thing, now if we have created another set of supply side institutions like microfinance institution who have a capacity, they have their own merits and demerits. That is a different part of the story. But now that they have created the joint liability groups, and there are more than 90 lakh, the recent figure says more than 90 lakh SHGs under the NRLM and SRLM programs in the country. So more than 1 crore SHGs and JLEs in the country as per a recent back of the paper and back of the envelope data. Even if there are 10 members on an average, so there are 1 lakh into 10. So that is the number. That is the number of people who are currently there in the system. And there are people, at least even if you assume there are 10% people who have availed 2 to 3 cycles of loans, their